am Poet Taylor.
And I'm Al Reynolds, and welcome to another 202 Creates Masterclass. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, we do. And kudos to Mayor Muriel Bowser and Director Angie M. Gates for allowing us to celebrate, support, and educate the district's creatives through 202 Creates.
So thank you very much from the bottom of our heart for joining us. All right, so a little bit about us. All right, we're going to start with you, Poet. Ladies first, right? Now, yes. I know that we can catch you on your own show. It's called Midday Shenanigans from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. In your dream position on WPGC 95.5 here in Washington, D.C. But that's not all. You're also a correspondent for Dish Nation on Fox 5. And let's not forget about your Black Girl Magic tour you took from D.C. to Florida while leading and hosting your own show, morning show at CBS. Wow, woman, you do it all. But you know what? You're not just that. You're also a motivational speaker, a philanthropist, a community liaison, a creative influencer. You do it all. Can't wait to learn more about it and share with you, our viewers.
Oh, man. I'm sitting here looking around trying to figure out who you were talking about. And then I'm like, really? Me? And I know, Al, you had all those good things to say about me. But can I give you your roses for just a second? Because this is awesome. You know how to make a girl blush, but that ain't the only thing. Let's talk about your credentials. Not only are you an on-air personality, but you also have a show that's rated #1 on FoxSoul, TGIF, love it. You can be seen on Good Day DC. Recently, you brought your Black boy joy and dopeness to the red carpet for the Mayor's Arts Awards. You were part of the Basketball Wives franchise, but you are also a corporate brand strategist working with Fortune 500 companies. I'm trying to figure out how you get this all done, and you are all fresh-faced. Plus, you hold a master's in public finance from the University of North Carolina and a bachelor's of science in urban development and design from the University of Virginia. Can we get a yes? Just all the way around. Amazingly dope. So let's get this conversation started. I couldn't wait to ask you this question because I've heard a few rumors of how you got started and how you got here.
Okay.
So can we start with how did you get started in the creative work that you're doing currently?
So there's a little bit of a misconception about how I got started in the game, but the truth is it started when I was a private banker working on Wall Street. So I worked in the sports and entertainment division of the investment firm that I was at. And so the majority of my clients were all sports and entertainment and in the creative space. So I managed everything from supermodels like Naomi Campbell to world athletes like Floyd Mayweather, John McEnroe, Little Bow Wow in the music space, Idris Elba in the film space. Who else in the fashion space? I also managed photographers like Stephen Klein. So that was kind of my first introduction, if you would, into the creative space. Being a banker, can you believe it?
I'd heard it, but then I was like, he a model and an on-air personality. What you mean banker? You just never know where like somebody's origin story is. I'm a comic girl, so origin stories are of interest to me. That is so dope.
Yeah, no, I hear it. Now tell me about yours. What was your first introduction?
Fun fact, I won a contest. So I am self-taught in radio, television production, programming, marketing, you name it. Everything I've learned is from like my friends' old school books and the internet. I lived in Baltimore, shout out to my hometown. And my radio station, 92Q, had a wanna be a QJ contest. It was something that I always dreamt of doing. I grew up in foster care. So giving that dream to your social worker was more kind of like, no, you better find a job and have a place to live before you age out. They do this contest. I try out the first year. I lose to the Huggable, Lovable Plus Love. Don't ask me how, I still remember that. And then the second year I try out, I win the internship. And as my internship is ending, the producer for like the afternoon show from 2 to 6 p.m. has an accident at his birthday party. I have asked to step in. And that is how I got my first full-time radio gig. Afternoon show in Baltimore.
Wow, congratulations. So from foster care to mainstream radio, right?
Yes. Wow. In one of the top markets of the country. Like my life right now is surreal because I don't ever think we see what God has planned the way that God has it planned. Right. So if you would have told me that in 2021, I'd be sitting in my cranberry shirt talking to the Al Reynolds, I would have been like, child, bye. Right. But here I sit in this moment, and it's just an honor and a pleasure to even be here.
No, that's for real. Even on my side, I think about the way God is moving in my life, and you're completely right. But let me ask you this, Poet. Do you think that our form or your form of artistic expression, or do you feel, maybe it shouldn't be do you think, but do you feel that you receive the support and attention that other art forms receive?
I definitely think my work is a form of artistic expression. I'm most certainly speaking to different levels of folks every time I crack that mic, every time I step in front of a camera, and I understand the power in that. So I wield it like I'm supposed to. When it comes to if I think that I get the support or the attention, you learn very early that you're not going to really get the support in most things from the people or the tribe you assume it to come from. Mm-hmm. And in a world where you can buy an image, I can filter the life that I want. I don't take much stock in the views and comments and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I go according to when I get to fellowship in real life, which is what I call bumping into people that watch our shows, that follow us on social. Right. And they say, when you shared how you got through, right now I'm dealing with the death of my father, still grieving. Ooh. You sharing, you going to therapy and talking that out and how you felt when you first passed, helped me deal with this or that. That's how I measure if I'm really walking in my purpose and doing my work. It's not so much the frivolous stuff, because I can pay for that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But when people come up to you and they're like, oh, Al, when you shared this story, it changed the way I viewed my son or my daughter and what their dreams were. That's the testimony to me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and planting the seeds that I'm supposed to be planting. Now, I'm going to turn that question back on you, because you are a master of all these things. Do you feel like your work is a form of artistic expression? And do you feel like it's supported and viewed or, appreciated like it should be?
I'm just learning that it is. So it's so funny to listen to you, because it's something that you've known your entire creative expression life. For me, I'm just learning, because this is my first time being in front of the camera on a regular basis. And unlike you, a million listeners, I don't have that yet, but I can say that we're 500,000. But so I am learning that it is a form of creative expression. And it was something that I probably have needed for a long time, in all honesty, and being able to share that. And like you said, something that's coming out of my mouth that influences or moves someone else that's listening is the best feeling ever. So when I share my views on racism, or if I share my views on child pornography or sex trafficking, or if I share my views on how I grew up in the LGBTQ plus community, and someone says, oh my gosh, what you shared touched me and it's helped me be a better me, or I used to think the same way. So yeah, it's like, oh wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, as it relates to, do I get a lot of fanfare, like say a rapper, DaBaby, or Cardi B, or, another person? I think I have to concur with you. Mine is in a different way. My favorite's in a different way. My journey is a different journey. So I try not to never compare myself, even though social media be messing with you, Poet. Social media be messing with you. But you know what? Like you said, if you come from a space of blessing and being blessed, then it all works itself out.
It really, really does. And I think you have to take social media with a grain of salt. Right. I think we all take 100 pictures to post the one that we think will be the most well received. I'm just now getting into a space where, the fall body I got now will probably be the spring body with a few tweaks that you're going to get come January, February, and being okay with that and understanding that somebody somewhere needs your light and your superpower as only as you can give it. That's and right. I think a lot of times we do get sucked into seeing this person getting the promotion and the new car, and we don't take full stock of all the blessings that we have that we could be sharing our own testimonies with. So I'm glad that you touched upon that, because that's important. And I'm hoping, if nothing else, people walk away from this conversation today like, you know what? I'm couture piece of dopeness. How I'm supposed to be as is, take it. And we will, and people will receive it. Now, with all that you have going on, especially, to have a #1 rated show on FoxSoul, what is a day for you like? Like, is there prep the night before? Do you get some downtime during the day? I'm curious because Lord knows sometimes I feel like I blink and it's like 5 o'clock.
Let me tell you something. My dad used to tell me, you sleep when you die.
Oh,
so I've kind of always incorporated that mentality in myself, even though as I get older, it's very important to get your sleep. But I used up all my day, and I do it because unlike yourself, I still have a corporate job that I keep going, or a corporate business. I run my own consulting firm. So I have clients that I manage from, morning to evening. And then in the evening, that's when I turn into a more television personality type of guy. So my day usually starts about 7:30. And I'm not a morning person. So it takes me a good solid 30 minutes to get out the bed. Like I'll be in the bed talking to myself, all right, you got to get up out of this bed. Hit the snooze like 10 times. But that's how my morning starts. I do a great deal of being thankful, meditating, praying, thanking God for another beautiful day, helping me get through the day. And then I go into my corporate job and I run those corporate accounts accordingly, doing what I'm hired to do for them. And then all during the day in that time, I'm constantly listening to the news. And the lucky part is my corporate job and my television job, I'm known for two things. That's one is knowing the facts and giving you all the details so that you can make an informed decision on yourself with a splash of how I feel. So luckily I get to let those run in tandem together. So during the day, I'll monitor trends. I'll go on Bloomberg to see what's going on in business, what's going on with the celebrities. I'll go on LexisNexis if there's a death or something as it relates to criminal activity on one of the stories. I always want to read the court documents to see who's telling the truth and the lie. All right. And then another layer of me, which is I've been fortunate, is I'm married into entertainment. So I know a great deal of celebrities at both the highest level and the beginning level. And I'll get on the phone and I'll call them and say, hey, what did you do? And I'm like, all right, you can tell me, I won't tell anyone, but just, I don't want to be out here looking crazy if you, in fact, ran over that child.
No.
So that's kind of my day. And then, I wrap up the day how I started. I'm talking myself back into the bed and praying and giving thanks.
Oh, wow. That's a full day. Like, you have a full day. Mine is about the same. My day starts at about 5:30. And that's not by choice. It's by the force of Patricia Taylor, who in retirement thinks that her waking hour is my waking hour. It is not, but apparently it is. So about 5:30, I wake up, give thanks. I'm always thankful for the day. I normally speak to my mom. Then I start watching the news and such after I meditate. What transpired last night, because to your point, your celebrity friends be out of control. Mm-hmm. I go to bed at 6, it's nothing. You wake up at 6 a.m. and it's all kinds of things. Right. So I check what's trending times what I've already saved as things I want to talk about on my show. The next day, I work out, play with my dog, and then start prepping to make my trip to the studio, which is my first stop. And for the most part, it's me in the comments section, reading how people feel about things to gauge where people are, and then trying my best to be a voice for those who listen to me. What are y'all dealing with? What are you talking about? Is it $85 turkeys? Or is it Cardi B having to school people on what natural hair looks like and how different it looks for all of us, which is how I came up with edutainment. So for me, that's my day. And I ended the same way. The only difference is I have a friend of mine who told me when he was younger, the rule of thumb was when they came home from school, they couldn't turn the TV on for 2 hours. They had to interact as a family, talk about their day, whatever. I adopted that after talking to him about it. So when I get home now, there's no television. I put my phone on silent for a good 2 hours, play with my dog, might cook myself a meal, might soak in the tub, but it's 2 days for me to unplug from all of it, recharge my own energy, and then bounce back like I never left. And then be up to like 11:30, still watching the news cycle and trying to figure out how I'm gonna prep for my show.
Got it. So are there any other ways that you tap into, any other superpowers that you tap into to stay creative?
I pull creativity from everything, from driving down the street and seeing somebody stop to kiss. And most of it comes from things that happen to me. Prime example, there's all this construction where our studio is in Navy Yard. The construction folks on both construction sites forget that people live and work down here. So streets be blocked. I got on the air and was like, can I talk to you construction folks? Call in if you having that issue. And people called in and talked about their locations in the city, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, where, I need for the people to know we got to get to this McDonald's, or we be trying to get to the Metro. And that's for me. It's no one place for me.
Right. Okay.
Today, it was me being single during cuffing season and trying to figure out how do people keep letting all this just go to waste? So I pull it for me, for everywhere. Is there something that you do or a space that you pull from when you're thinking of what you want to talk about on your show or for a television appearance?
It's really interesting. I'm probably like you. I take it a little bit from everywhere, but I also lean heavily on my nieces and nephews. Because a lot of it is pop culture that I talk about as it relates to my television stuff and entertainment. So I always want to make sure I got my finger on the pulse and how the young people are thinking about things and how they're perceiving things. And I try to marry that to how I did things. And then my mother had me when she was 45, so I feel like I'm an old soul. Then I married that to my old soul back in the day, how the old folks used to raise you and make sure you did what was correct. So I try to take all three of those and put them together and share those perspectives. Another thing that I do is I always look to the opposing team to share with me about how crazy and ludicrous they think about stuff. And I try to process that so that I'll have an even finer idea of how and what I want to share.
Let me just go ahead and write that down in my book of notes that I was going to take from today. Make sure that I keep that little jewel. So for somebody that's always on, what does downtime for you look like? Like, how do you woosah after a day of filming and getting the tea, the dirt, and the Hennessy? How do you unplug? Or do you?
Well, you have to learn to unplug in different ways. So one thing that I do is I also turn my phone off, or I'll put it on do not disturb. You know what I mean? And then I have another phone that if you absolutely have to get to me, you use that phone. So when that phone goes off, I know it's a family, something's going on. I work out a lot. I spend a great deal of time running and working out. I take care of my body. I play games with myself mentally just to kind of stay on course on my downtime, like, how to eat healthy, how to have more energy without caffeine, stuff like that. And another thing that I do is I actually like going outside, Poet, and just watching the energy of the streets and watching it come through me and clean me out so that I can prepare for the next day.
I love that. I do random acts of kindness, collect blankets from my friends, and then spend my evening driving around town, laying them over people who are sleeping outside, or making lunches, or if I'm at the tolls, paying for the cars, but like a car or two behind me, leaving my change at the drive-through window, put that towards somebody's thing. The thing that'll make somebody be like, dang, I'm gonna go do this then, and hoping that it's a chain reaction of goodness.
Right. Oh, that's really cool.
All around the place. You'd be surprised at how it will lift your spirits when you are able to do something for somebody that you may not ever meet. I am the baby that the village raised. It's why when you listen to me on air, when you see me out, I always talk about the village. I grew up in foster care. I am a product of people pouring into me, my group home where I live, teaching us the bare basics from cooking to hygiene, getting picked up by my foster family and being told and molded and poured into. So when I think about that's my downtime, how can I plant these seeds? Because I know life is life in everybody and everybody needs it. So it's good to hear that you do unplug, because I was scared for a second there. My uncle used to be like, you can sleep when you die. But I was like, I don't want to wait till then. I like a good adult nap. So
you want to do it now, right? That's that, like I said before, the younger generation just brings a whole new energy into this space. And I really love it because you guys have boundaries that you have set for yourself. And you're like, no, I'm going to work hard, but I'm also going to enjoy my fruit of my labor. So, that for me, I've always come from that old school that you work hard, you stockpile it away, you work hard, you work hard, you work hard. And you look up and you're where you want to be. But I did want to ask you this, because this is something that happens with us creatives all the time. Let's talk about your business side, because I can tell you're a little businesswoman up in there now. You may be fun and interactive and a great personality and creative, but talk to me about your business side. And what is the one thing for you that you need on the business side to protect yourself and your brand, and your music? I mean, and your talk product, just your whole brand.
So just as far as my brand, I would say when it comes to protecting those things, it's about knowing how much you risk to lose for doing something stupid. So I also listen twice as much as I speak. I tend to not fall into the trap because people that don't have anything to lose will always try you. So the first I would say is know what you're fighting and what you're fighting for, and remember who you are and whose you are. So I don't run into a lot of them issues. I will say have a good team around you. I think to your point of the old school way of thinking is that you got to go out here, work your fingers to the bone, to the white meat, and then just be out. No, my father always told me, when in doubt, get an expert, because you're not the expert at everything. And understand that you're 1 degree separated from whatever it is that you need. So I would say the best advice I could give is to have the proper team around you. I have a manager that schedules my personal time because she knows sometimes I won't. That's important to me, that she remembers things that sometimes, you know how you get caught up as a talent in the whirlwind of a day and forget that you have an autograph signing or a Zoom at 3. Have a team around you and make sure that the people that you put in positions for you, which was mandatory for me, are qualified for the job. Like, it's nice that you love your cousin and you want to elevate with your bestie, but if they don't know taxes, they shouldn't be handling your money. If they always the late friend, they shouldn't be your assistant running your schedule. Right. So those are the things that I run with, and knowing your worth and understanding that I say no to checks sometimes because people don't see my worth, and that's not my problem. That's really a you problem. And we've been conditioned to get all the bags. No, one person not willing to pay you what you're worth or what your rate sheet says, I guarantee you there are 3 or 4 that will happily meet you there and sometimes pay you more than that because they see more in you than you see in yourself. And I get to ask you, because you've dealt in management and representation, there's so many emerging entrepreneurs, artists. What's your rule of thumb when it comes to having a manager versus like a PR person? Do I need both? Because, we all got something we're trying to say.
That's right. So, my bit of advice is, like you said, you have to create. For me, I have what's called, for my brand, I have a board of directors. The same way these major corporations have a board of directors that looks over the entire company to make sure that it's running well in human resources, it's running well in marketing, it's running well in public relations, it's running well in sales. I kind of build myself out a team similar to what you mentioned that has that lane on lock. So I have a lawyer. I have a CPA, I have a manager, I have a mechanic. you have people that have the expertise, like you shared, in the space that you're going to need as you start to build your brand and build your business, because it ends up being a business. Now, for those who don't have the ability to have all of those different people on your team, what you then do is how I started out. I leaned on my fraternity, where there are lawyers in my fraternity that could help me with a contract deal. I leaned in my church. Is there someone in the church that did public relations or did marketing at one of their jobs? If I could lean into them to see what they could recommend for me to do. Also, I would lean into the other organizations that I participated in. Like I grew up in the YMCA. So the YMCA is a big part of my tribe and my community. So at the YMCA, who did I play basketball with? Who did I work out with? Who I played tennis with that had the expertise in something that I didn't know, that I can't necessarily hire them right now, but I could lean on them for some good, solid advice. So that's kind of how I built it out. How did I know I was going to get a good lawyer? How did I know I was going to get a good manager? How did I know who I was picking was going to be right? It was usually people that I witnessed being successful, or it was people that had the level of respect in their industry that I wanted my representation to have.
When you worked with those people, the people that you leaned on, was there any discussion of maybe having a contract or something in hand? Because I'm gonna be honest, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because this day and time, you feel like I talked to you about an idea I have in January. Right. Even if I do the work and execute it, you might come sue me in December talking about, well, we had coffee and I told you this. So were there any conversations like that? Like, this is pro bono? Should we be having those kind of conversations before we sit down
Well,
about
you know what? Luckily, times have changed. So one thing that you always have to have in everything these days is a paper trail. So even a text message or email now is considered contractual. So if you introduced a product or something and you texted to the person or you emailed it to the person or said that you want to talk to them about this, you have a timestamp of the day and the time that it happened. So if there did become a legal issue, you could pull it back and say, look, Judge, on Tuesday, January 4th, I talked to him about this. He didn't bring this out or up or develop it outside of me until June 4th. I have a time step showing that this was my concept. But yes, one thing that I always do, and this is just a quirky part of me, I didn't do it in the beginning, but I also have people sign a non-disclosure. And that non-disclosure is just letting people know that I'm going to share information with you as I'm building out myself as a talent, and you can't share that with anybody else without my permission.
You know, while we're talking talent, entertainment, and all of these wonderful things that we're a part of, can I ask what you'd like to see change in media and entertainment, since you get to see a side that most people don't see? Right. Now you're participating in the side that we see.
We see, right? Oh my God, that is. You know what, Poet? I don't know why you spending all those nights alone. You better call me. We'll go get a drink. That's such a good question. Seriously, that is a good question. And you're right. I've been blessed where I've worked on both sides of entertainment. I've worked in front of the camera and I've worked behind the camera with the corporation. And the corporation needs something totally different than what the talent needs. And I've just been so blessed to join the two. What I can say about what I would like to see changed is that there needs to be a more, and it's coming. It's because the transparency of social media is forcing these big media houses to be more transparent with the talent. Talents are like, hey, if you're especially African-American females and acting are like, hey, we deserve the same pay as the Black male actors. Black male actors and actresses are now saying, hey, we deserve the same pay as the white female actors and actors. And that's amazing to watch this kind of evolve. So those are the things that I like seeing change. And one of the other things that I would like to see change, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is in our own community. I would like for us to understand that there is enough opportunity and enough money for all of us to eat. And not just eat a little bit. We can all eat very well, and we no longer have to participate in this crab in a barrel mentality where if somebody's doing better than us, that we can't support them and cheer them on without thinking that we're losing. So that's one of the main things that I think I would like to see change in the industry, especially in entertainment.
I think for me, I want to see us get to telling the full story. We run with something when it's a headline, and then we never give it a wrap up or an ending. Or how did it turn out? Or did you help and spread the word, bring that kid home, or find justice? The other thing is that I find that we in media are sometimes our own worst enemies, that we feed into the narratives that, you know, if we having cocktails, we talking about, I hate how they only show Black men in this way or whomever in this way. But we're the ones giving the story. So doesn't that start with us? Shouldn't we be at the tables when we're doing segment planning for, let's say, the 4 a.m. show on your local news station? Shouldn't we be the ones at the table saying, if we're going to run this, then we got to make sure we put this? That's not the picture for it. And I think sometimes we don't stand up in that space. When I got into radio, I noticed that there were things fed to certain communities that when I turned on the television or radio geared towards someone else, that's not what they were selling. So I created edutainment. Like, yeah, we can talk about LeBron James and his stance here and his Taco Tuesday and his tequila. But how about I tell you that if you live here, you can get free coding classes for your kids. Right. Maybe they don't do it at the school. And I wanted to bridge the two just for that reason. I felt like we weren't properly serving the people that come to us for their news, their entertainment, their politics, and their pop culture. So those are things that I would like to see. You know, we often talk about having a seat at the table, but now that you have a seat at the table, what are you doing with it? If you're just sitting there looking pretty, handsome, that don't do nothing for the cause. That's so I like for us to give full stories and really show up and be the people that break the chains of what we are used to seeing. Who says if it bleed, it gotta lead? Maybe I don't want to see that all day, every day. Maybe I want to lead in love instead. So that's definitely one for me. Now, in talking about all the things that we do, if you weren't gracing us on television, if you didn't have this business, is there anything else you would see yourself doing?
Yeah, let's see. So if I wasn't on television and I wasn't working with my corporate clients, I would be somewhere in an HBCU or some other educational outlet teaching people how to be the best version of themselves as they chase their dreams. One of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had in my life, in my 30 years of working, was working at an HBCU. Being able to take everything that I learned in corporate America from working with billion-dollar clients, traveling all 6 continents, and just everything that I got that, just made up my success set. I was able to pour it into someone, and that feeling was just one of the best things I've ever experienced. So I would say if I wasn't on television and having corporate clients, I would be back in the classroom on the front lines, helping individuals find their true passion, their true love, and teaching them something that nobody can ever take away from them.
Must you be so awesome all the time? I mean, really? Now here I am with my little answer. I'm like, I don't know if I want to answer now. No,
come on. Yours are always great. Cut it out.
Fun fact, when you are in radio, you normally start out part-time, so you have all these jobs everywhere. I was a substitute teacher. Shout out to Baltimore City Community High School. I was one of their favorite teachers. I taught social media safety.
I can see that.
I was noticing some things and was like, listen, y'all, you don't want this here when you're trying to get a job 6 years down the line. But if I was not doing public, like motivational speaking, television and radio, honestly, Al, I would be a chef. And to a degree, I am now. I get so much pleasure out of feeding people, watching somebody enjoy a meal. And now that I've found like the spice wheat and I can get lavender sugar, now I just want to be fancy in the kitchen. So I would have a restaurant. It would probably be called Thick Thighs because we specialize in like thighs and different kinds of sauces. And then everything would have some kind of thickness to it because, curvy girl united. So, but yeah, I do. And one day I make like a 5-cheese, 3-meat lasagna. I make a seafood lasagna. I make banana pudding is one that people request, and during the holidays, my sweet potato cheesecake bites are another one that people.
Let's break this all the way down.
You are more than welcome to join me and my family. Bring your stretchy pants because we eat and then we relax. As we think holiday season, I want to just switch gears just a little bit. Okay. This time of year when we get an hour back, spring forward, fall back, we get the hour back. But because the days are shorter, people go through seasonal affective disorder where you don't feel the best. How do you keep your mental health up in this moment, especially when you're in the public eye? People are always coming at you. I know before you had spoken about your mental health journey and what it meant and how it impacted those sexuality rumors back in the day and how you dealt. Do you mind? Like, I feel like we have this moment, we have all these eyes on us.
Listen, absolutely. I live a very transparent life. The only reason you never knew it was because I never talked about it. So I spent 20 years in the public eye, but no one ever heard me. No one ever got to hear my side of the story, if you will. And I lived under this narrative that was totally disconnected to who I really was. So my mental health in the beginning was a lot of praying and just trying to figure out, God, what is it that you have me going through? And I can't lie to you. Then I rotated out of that to, I need a strong drink to deal with this. Like, I need something to drink. I need something to take my mind off of that type of stuff. And then, I coupled that with, when you work in banking, it's all about trust, right? People trust you with millions and millions of dollars. And so when there's this narrative being built about you, about not being honest and forthright, then it seeps into your corporate life where people are looking at you. My clients were looking at me like, okay, so if you're not being forthright about this, are you being forthright about what you're proposing for me to do for the rest of my life with my money? And then you also just have people that are homophobic, or you can say LGBTQ plus phobic. They don't understand that there's a spectrum, and people land on that spectrum in different areas. So in my fraternity, I had a lot of my brothers who were not comfortable with me because I was bisexual. The same thing in my church family. They didn't understand it and they weren't comfortable. And so some of them, you may interpret that as them turning their backs on me, and mentally me thinking that that's exactly what I was experiencing as they stepped away. But what I had to understand was that who I am and how God made me, he made not one single mistake. All right. And the mistakes comes from how people interpret how I show up to the world. And all I can do in helping people in that interp is sharing with them my true self at all times and speaking my truth and breathing air into how I think and feel and how he's created me. And luckily, that's one of the things that this past year has really offered me with this job. This job has allowed me to speak my truth, to walk in my space, to create a voice around the person that people never heard before. And on top of that, I get to do it by making people laugh, Poet. Like, so our show is very ratchet and we make people laugh. And we're going through COVID, we're going through disease, we're going through financial woes, we're going through unemployment, we're going through a time where as Americans, we have stood up to so freaking much that it's a wonder if any of us are still able to operate and be sane. So for my mental health, I got to tell you, one of the biggest things has been in front of the camera, and who knew that would be where it all came to full evolution for me. So being able to get in front of the camera every day in my show and make people laugh, share a little bit about myself and who I really am, it really helped me process everything else that God had me go through, with all the turned backs, all the closed doors, all the racism. I mean, I would drive down the street and people in my convertible and people would throw beer cans at me and call me a faggot, which I just felt like that time was just horrible. Like, oh, like we really living like this. In the same way that when I'm driving in certain areas of the United States, you know, when I drive up in a nice car and walk in and get something to eat, people are looking at me like, oh, okay, he must sell drugs. So that racism runs deep. So mental health for me right now is just sharing, pouring out who I am. And I do have a therapist too, but you know, the therapist to me serves as a coach. Is this what I'm thinking? If what I'm thinking is right, am I off tilted? Is there something else I need to understand about myself? And then I pray and I lean on my church family.
I wanted to make sure we touched upon that. You know, you would think that the holiday season is when people should be at 100 and in the best of feelings. And there are all these things that chip away at it. And I just know that the way people look up to you, hearing how you battled back then, how you've carried some of those gems from your toolbox into right now, it's helpful. It's helpful to me. I stand my therapist. She keep trying to retire, and I told her, even when she retired,
no, not
I'm gonna still be a client regardless. And I tell people all the time, it gives you a very safe space in an unbiased space to unpack things that you may not know have been affecting you since you were a kid. You know, I can remember some of the things adults told the chunky little me that made me very self-conscious about my curves and stuff today. And sitting in therapy and unpacking those things, I tell everybody, unpack it. And life changes when you're able to see things how they are and deal with them accordingly. Now, the flip side of what you were just talking about, we know how to deal with our mental wellness, but in the world of cancel culture, how do we deal there? You know, you deal with clients. So as we talk about getting dragged for your opinions, especially right now, there are a bunch of different conversations going, whether it's the have and have nots or this or the that. What are your thoughts? And how do you deal with those situations on your show and when you're addressing the audience? Because, you know, both of our shows are mirrored after real life.
That's right.
Are we dealing?
You know, it's very difficult because you never know how a person is going to interpret you. And how I like to come into it is when I share my thoughts and my feelings, I always want my viewers or my listeners to understand that this is where I am in my interpretation and my understanding, but I'm open. I'm open to completely understanding a totally different side of it. And I need sometimes for them to teach me before they cancel me, because we can't have any growth if there's not a teachable moment. Because if you cancel me, I'm not going to change. Now you got me mad, right? Now you got me on the outside. Bring me in and teach me a little bit. And I think that we saw that with the baby, even though a lot of people can argue if it was true or not. But those 9 organizations that came together in the LGBTQ plus community and said, come here, young man, we're not going to cancel you. What I need for you to know is about this disease and know who you're talking to and how you're talking. And then on top of that, let's layer on top of that the fact that you have an influence. And so what comes out of your mouth influences the narrative in the streets. And we need you to have the full circle on that, right? Yeah. So that the cancel culture for me is kind of how I hold on, because I know I was teetering there for a minute when it came to the transgender conversation. That was a learning curve for me, and I'm still learning about it. And the best part about it is that I'm open to want to understand. So that's kind of how I dodge the bullets of cancel culture. But like I know, Poet, it's a slippery slope out here. And so sometimes just us being true to ourselves might get us canceled. And if I ever find myself on that side, then I have to live in it, because I don't feel comfortable compromising everything that I grew up to be and learn from my village to be wrong.
I really like that answer. I was curious about it because it's so easy. And then with social media, being able to amplify everything times a million before you even get full traction.
Right.
For me, it's always, I want to be considerate. And a lot of times I walk into the space and I'm totally transparent that I don't know all of the pronouns. So if I trip up, teach me.
Right.
And I think that that's the way that we should approach it. Mm-hmm. I think of the things that were acceptable when my parents first got together. My mom's 73. I think of the things that maybe she learned 40 years ago or 50 years ago that most certainly don't apply with my single girl life.
That's
right now. You know what I mean? But we are what we are taught. So I'm happy to shed a little light on, I know y'all want to cancel things, but do we really? I tell everybody, I don't know too many people outside of a baby fresh out the womb that don't have a skeleton or two, a tweet, a comment that could be used to be detrimental to somebody. But if I was a different mind space, if I was a different person at that time, there is room for education. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, even with social, we're taking that into consideration. Like, how can I help you pass this moment versus kicking you while you're down?
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. I agree.
Good. Look at us.
I know you got some more great questions in here. Come on with it.
I do. So this is what I wanted to get to now. And now I get to get really excited.
Oh, you sitting up. I'm in trouble.
Yes. Well, my mother always tells me not to slouch, but listen. Okay. As we're talking about all the different entities that we're a part of, I just got my EIN number to start my production consultant company.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll be calling you because, you are a master of all things. It's okay. Like, we can sit here now and talk about where we are. You're showing FoxSoul, me on PGC and Dish Nation. Can we talk about dealing with rejection and people telling you no as you climb this mountain?
Sure
and how you dealt with that? Because a lot of times I think people see the end result. You see the new house, but not me eating oodles and noodles for 2 years to afford the down payment. You know what I mean? So if we could just take a moment, how do you deal with rejection? Even now, I'm sure you pitch or offer things and people be like, no.
Right.
So how do you bounce back?
Right. Oh, wow. I'll never forget, my first rejection was when I was 5 or 6 and I went with my dad to the bank, and the banker looked over at me and said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A banker." I said, "Show me the money. I want to be a banker." And he was like, "Well, young man, you sure you don't want to join the military?" It's almost like he was trying to tell me by looking at me and where I came from, what I should do with my life. Right. So, obviously that spirited something in me, that put a fire in my pit to never let anyone else's insecurity affect my trajectory, right? So rejection to me, even though sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not, sometimes people like it, sometimes they don't, I use that as fuel. I try to use every negative thing in my life as fuel to ignite what it is that I am still going to do regardless, right? So I never give up. I always feel like if I put one foot in front of the other, and it has been hard. After my divorce, I was canceled across the board. I couldn't get a meeting with television execs, or I couldn't get a meeting with corporate boardrooms to get a job. I was canceled across the board, and I hit rock freaking bottom and had to start all over. But what didn't kill me made me stronger. And I know that not getting back up, not making another step is not an option for me. And it became a part of my psyche where you might not accept me, you might reject me, but somebody is not going to reject me. And I'm gonna keep going until I find that person, because that's the person I need to be with. That's the person that I need on my team. And that's the spirit that I need in order to keep going.
And here I was just going to say that my father always told me there are wins and then there are lessons. I didn't grow up in a household of loss or failure. So whenever I would come home and be like, oh, I failed, I didn't get this, my father would be like, nah, right. You won. It's just not in the capacity that you thought you were going to win.
That's right.
So
That's right.
What can we pull from this to hurdle you over this the next time you get this opportunity, if you get it? And then that's how I started. That's how I grew as a person. Yeah. It was kind of like, oh, that guy didn't want me. His loss, perhaps. But what can I take from this? What role did I play in why this didn't work out the way that I wanted it to work out? So when people have rejected segment pitches, ideas, if I'm being completely transparent, I had applied for quite a few morning show positions and on-camera positions, and I was told that I was too fat, that nobody would want me on air, on radio, because I have a list. Right. You would have to change your hair color or wear a weave. And I was just like, but when I'm outside, I see people shaped like me, look like me, talk like me. Biggie had a list and was a whole platinum selling artist. So what you mean?
You like, give me mine right now. Yes.
You're going to give it to me today.
Today. So, I showed up today.
I think people, we should be having these kind of conversations. Yeah. I couldn't imagine how you feel as a kid when you're like, I want to be a banker. Oh, you sure? Because when I say I want to be on TV, people be like,
really?
You have a nice personality. I'd be like, wait a minute. So
what does that mean? Yeah. That's another thing, though, Poet. That's another thing. As a creative, and this is for everybody that's listening, if you got a creative bone in your body, you got to know that that bone has to be nurtured. And after it's nurtured, you got to find someone to manage it. And that usually has to come from, you got to surround yourself with positive people. Like, you have to surround yourself with people that see that glass half full and not half empty, in my opinion. Especially as a creative, we are a special flock of blessings. And what we have to always live in is that affirmation that we are that, right? So I for me, love the fact that my mother had, I had 6 aunts and 5 uncles. And anytime there was something that I wanted to do, go ahead, boy, go. You can do it. You want to run track. Yes, you're going to be the fastest track runner. You want to do the debate club. You're going to be the best debate going. You want to be acting. You want to be in drama. Yes, do drama, and you're going to show up every day. And you're going to be the best you. And that just gives a creative a whole different garden to grow in. And them watering it just made me grow and grow and grow and grow and grow.
Can we add to that list? It's okay to not be the smartest person in the room. I don't like being the smartest person in the room because it means it's nothing for me to learn in that room. Right. I like to surround myself with people that are at levels that I aspire to attain.
That's right.
Now, speaking of honing in on your superpowers, if you were a superhero, what would your power be outside of the fact that you're amazing with money in front of a camera and with people? What else? You're invisible. You flying.
Dang, that's a good one. Be invisible. I always thought that was a cool one. I think if I don't know. I'm torn here because, I do have the banking background. So one of my superpowers for me is I would not want there to be poverty and inequity. So I would want everybody to have money, especially in our community. We just feel like that we're wroth with all of these issues because we don't have money, when that's not really what it is. We're wroth with these issues because people are constantly trying to remind you that you didn't come from greatness, and you did. So one of my superpowers would be definitely giving people who felt an inequity in their life the equity. And then my other superpower, to be honest with you, Poet, is we're experiencing a time where a lot of people are not happy and they don't know what love, true love and dedication feels like. So I think I would sprinkle some money and I would sprinkle some love around if I had superpowers to share.
Oh, I love that. So love would most certainly be my superpower. Right. I just sprinkle it on people. And it's not just about romance. people say that I'm a community liaison. I tell people I'm a community love liaison. I lead in love. I know the difference in my life when I was in care and I didn't feel love or wanted or anything that brings you to warm and fuzzies. I know what I felt the minute I was embraced by my foster family, which then became my family, and then my extended family. Love changed me. I was a girl that kept getting expelled from schools and fighting and had this chip on my shoulder. I had experienced a lot as a kid. You put abuse behind it. I had experienced that, so it wasn't without merit, but love changed the way that I live. Really and even with therapy, the more I love myself, I can't talk about some girl's wig not being right or her edges not being laid, because when you truly love you, how you engage and deal with people is completely different too. And that's what I'm learning. So I definitely be like, boom, and you get some love. Boom, and you get some love,
and everybody gets love.
Now, my other superpower would be time travel. I am going back to when the first person thought that slavery would be cool and be like, let's erase that thought off.
Oh, I was going to say, don't take me back to slavery. I wouldn't have done good in slavery.
I'm taking my time travel superpowers and I'm changing all the things that stop cultures from being all that they were brought here to be. Gotcha. I know you think that's a good idea, but that ain't. So let's not do that. Let's not do that. I'm going back in time and I'm fixing all the wrongs and making them right.
Fixing all the wrongs. I like that.
Well, I like traveling. My wallet says otherwise, but listen, if I had that superpower, I'm going to go with it and I'm going to rock with it. Oh, man. I never even really thought of that till now. Like, what would my superpower be? And would I use it for good? Because then I could also go back in time and change a couple bills and stuff. But
right.
I'm thankful for now. Paychecks.
Right. Grades.
Before we have to wrap this, can I ask you about the biggest risk you've ever taken? You seem like you are a dreamer, a mover, a shaker, a doer. Was there a risk that you took and it maybe didn't pan out, or a risk that you took and you were like, dang, who knew it would work out this well?
I'm going to share this risk with you really quickly because it's a risk that I'm really proud about. So I was recruited. I don't know how I started out in marketing out of business school, and I launched $3 billion drugs. I've launched Lipitor, I launched Resolent, and I launched Viagra. And just being a supermarketeer at that time, I was recruited away from working at Pfizer, Park Davis, and I was brought to Merrill Lynch by at that time, he was the chief financial officer, and his name was Stan O'Neill, to come to Merrill Lynch and to work in the private bank office. Now, Stan O'Neill was the first and only African-American male in banking, in the investment banking world, not in the country, not in the US, but in the world, that was an African-American man. He eventually became the president of Merrill Lynch, and he was my mentor. And that was amazing. My mentor was first African-American man in the world to hold the president position in an investment firm. How great was that, poet? Well, little did I know in my tenure there, I would be sitting on the other side of him, suing him for racial discrimination because the Black bankers were under severe inequities at the firm, from pay to support to benefits. It was just the inequity was not just a little bit, but so strange that anybody at the helm that looked like me should not ever allow it. And because I joined that lawsuit, in that class action lawsuit, he defriended me and made my life hell at that organization, at that firm, and eventually made it so bad that I had to leave. But I stayed a part of that lawsuit because my mother has always taught me, you stand for something or you'll fall for anything. And even though, like I shared with you, I wanted to be a banker my entire life, I knew that I couldn't be a banker knowing that the president of my company, who looks like me, lets there be such an inequity in the firm and could sleep every night and know that some of us weren't eating as well as our colleagues simply by the color of our skin. So I knew I had to stand up for that. And even though it took 8 years, we actually finally won. In 2014, a lawsuit that started in 2007. Is that right? Yeah, 8 years, 2014, 2015. And That was my biggest accomplishment. It was the largest racial discrimination case in the history of civil rights. And that then spun off to him being taken out of his role as president and replaced by someone else.
Thank you for standing in that space. I can't imagine having my dream job and then being like, oh, this is some BS, let me X, Y, and Z, right. And having to stand in that. I'm so thankful that you did that. You did that and didn't even know that you'd be saving generations after you from going through that. Yeah. I think my biggest risk was me, like really, really betting on me as is. No Spanx, no lashes, no long hair, no perfect body by society standards. It was really stepping out on the faith that I truly am enough and the risk of not just saying it, but really walking in it. So that was one of my biggest risks because Alf for so long, I wouldn't post pictures of me. I worked at a radio station and wouldn't come out on stage to bring out an artist for fear that in my mind, people would see my gut or my love handles and care more about that than how else I show up for them. Right. So that was one of the biggest risks of my life. Looking myself in the mirror and being like, if you don't get your cute little butterball self out here and step into these rooms that you prayed to be in and not stop talking yourself out of blessings that you've been having conversations with God about. And in 2021, I can say that the way that it's paying off, I'm in awe of it and kind of mad that I didn't take that risk ahead of time, but happy that I finally did. And that means something to me. So I'm hoping that people learn to take risks, even when they think they might lose it all, as you thought might have happened with that lawsuit, or really just taking the risk of stepping out on faith and betting on you.
That's right.
And winning.
I agree with that. Oh my God, that's a word right there. That's a word.
Well, now that we're having this conversation, what would you tell your younger self? Not necessarily about this industry, but period. You've lived to be, what are you now, 25? So what are we telling folks?
My younger self, see, I was a little bit hard-headed now, so I would tell my younger self that, I was a little of a pistol. So I would tell my younger self that being rejected, it not happening on your time doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. That's kind of what I would tell my younger self. And that just because someone didn't see your vision doesn't mean that your vision is not going to come true.
Ooh. I would tell my younger self, you're enough. As is, with whatever you think are your imperfections, you're actually perfectly flawed. Like right now, in this moment, with the money in your bank account, you are good enough to start that business. Will it be some trial and tribulations? I'm sure. What isn't an emotional roller coaster? But I would most certainly tell my younger self that everything that you need to get through this chapter, you got. You're good. Like as is. You don't need nothing extra. Anything you want to add or take away along the way is fine. But right now, you are dopeness personified. Walk with that, lean into it, get strength from it when you need it. But yeah, you, as is, right now.
For sure. For sure.
Now, I know about where you've been and where you're going. What's next for you? I know you got some stuff on the pipeline. Go ahead and tell me how to get the Al Reynolds eyeglass line and everything else, because I know you got it. I know you do.
No, you know what, poet? Believe it or not, I may not look like it, but I'm just a normal, regular, humble guy that is a servant. I'm a servant leader. So that means I have to always be out in the fields and helping people lift themselves up. That's just what I get off on. I think I shared with you. What's next for me is meeting great people like you, hopefully working with great people like you, doing more stuff on the entertainment space, finding my voice and making it a little louder. And then doing all that, taking all of that and packaging it. And like I said, going back out in the field and helping other people do the same thing. That's what's in store for me. Now, eyeglass line or some type of intellectual property birthed out of that, maybe. But that's not where my heart is. My heart is taking everything that I learned, everything that I do, every blessing that I've been given, taking it back into the field and the community and helping other people lift themselves up.
Oh, wow. For me, what's next? Immediately, I can say that I am coming up on my 5th Bits of Joy and toy. 5 years ago, I finally checked off my bucket list, me starting a toy give back during the holiday season. It was a promise that I made to God in foster care. I lived in a group home, and we would wake up every Christmas, every birthday with gifts under the tree or a card with a gift card. And it was really because people donated it. It's how I started the idea of hand-to-hand philanthropy. So the first couple of years I paid out of pocket, missed a couple bills to make sure it was done. We feed the kids, they get a picture with Santa, they get to decorate cookies. Well, pre-COVID, they decorated cookies or a wreath or whatever, and they got gifts that me and my friends would wrap. First year was like 250 kids, and I think last year we did about 800. So the goal now this year is if we can make 1,000, but that's immediate. Like that's coming December 20th, and it's one of, every year I cry and people make fun of me, but to be able to do that and to hold that promise to God that you get me through this, I'm gonna definitely come back and give and pour into people how they poured into me. Starting my 2nd season of We Working Wednesdays. I hope that you'll be a guest for that. It's where we sit down and we talk with those working in the village, how you're working and how we can pour into you, because I feel like a lot of times we don't share the experiences that we should. Mm-hmm. But if people knew all the things that you just shared with me in this masterclass, it's one thing to look at you now and be like, you don't understand how it is to struggle, do this, that, and the third. Right. But you do on a multitude of levels. That's right. So having that 2nd season and not even seeing the first is super dope. So I'm excited about that. And then continuing, PGC has decided to keep me a couple more years. So to be able to wake up and spend my day with DC, Maryland, and Virginia, there's just something about, I don't know, that is just magical to me, that if all the people they could tune into, all the options you have, you fellowship with me. So being able to do what I love for a couple more years, a decade, more than a decade, God willing, with a station that I grew up on in a city that helped raise me is just like, yeah. So the best is yet to come. There's some other things in the pipeline, you know, because you talked to me about non-disclosure agreements. I can't get into all of that. But keep your eye on the prize. Follow me on social and get in with it. Like, get into it. This goodness is for the getting.
We couldn't have wrapped this with a better anything. Thank you for sharing that. And viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us on today's Mayor Muriel Bowser Presents 202 Creates Masterclass. I had so much fun with you, Poet. Thank you.
This has been amazing. I've almost cried a couple times, and I'm like, you are a whole adult. Be grown. Put on your big girl panties, because you're not about to cry. But I am so thankful for this moment, for this space, to be considered. Like, to not have a home, to grow up in foster care, to age out the system, just to be in this space is just like, I am in awe of how God will use those that people consider throwaways or not worth it to really be walking testimonies of just how dope this life can be. So for not just Mayor Bowser, but for Angie M. Gates, for you, with your schedule to sit down with me. You just said you got a Rolodex and you can call up B and them like, listen, you sat down with me. I am emotionally overwhelmed in all the best ways. And to our audience, we hope you enjoyed this discussion and that you remain connected to 202 Creates. You know we're going to give you the rundown. Hit us with the comments. Right. Give us the feedback. Tell us who you want to see sit down next week. Here for it. Share it. Tag a friend who needs all these gems that were dropped today. Like, Al, you are magical. And I couldn't imagine doing this masterclass with anybody else now that I've had this conversation with you. So a reminder that 202 Creates provides entrepreneurship, programming, technical assistance, this masterclass and series, and the biannual residency program. Like, way to see the village showing up for the village. Full info, how you can get in on all this goodness, 202creates.com. Oh, Al. I am just elated right now. I feel like I got to go dancing.
I know.
Son and daughter.
It's so great. To learn more, visit us online, everybody. www.202creates.com, or follow us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook. That's www.202creates.com. And so, Poet, my Instagram, and I better see a request come through soon, is at The Al Reynolds is really, really simple. THEAL Reynolds, REYNOLDS. And it's the same on Twitter and all of my social platforms.
Well, I'm only on Facebook because of my mama, Poet Taylor. Find me. She likes to keep tabs. And at Just Curious Poe, everywhere that you are, everywhere that you'll find 202 Creates. Al, I came up with that name because I felt like people were curious about a lot of things that society has folks believing. Things to ask questions. Ask all the questions. Get all the answers. So please follow me, slide into my DM. She thinks I just
and can cook, y'all. She can cook. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.